Hello VC, what's going on? It's me Will, and I'm back again, this time to do a quick contest entry for Mark, also known as the Nerdy Punk here in YouTube. And Mark is a fellow VC member. I think I subscribed to his channel maybe a few years ago when he started making videos, and we have similar taste in music, so I really like watching his videos. And really into punk rock, very into pop punk music, and a huge Green Day fan as well. Great YouTuber, great guy. Make sure that you go ahead and subscribe to his channel or check him out at the Nerdy Punk. I'll put a link here in the description. Not only that, he's also a great movie reviewer. If you watch his videos, he puts a lot of thought about the movies that he watches, and I've actually discovered a lot of great movies from watching his movie reviews. But anyways, Mark is celebrating his 100 subscribers with a really cool contest with a theme that I don't think it has been done in the VC before as far as contests, but I could be wrong. But anyways, his contest is about gateway albums or gateway bands. Essentially, bands or albums that introduce you to a specific genre of music. And in my case, personally, I don't deviate too much outside of rock and roll music. Most of my collection is only rock and roll. But for this contest, I'm going to try to do it with different genres or sub-genres of rock and roll music, like alternative rock or punk rock. So hopefully this will work for the Nerdy Punks contest. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. He said to mention 5 albums or 5 bands that introduced you to a specific genre. So my very first one is actually very special for me because it's the very first CD that I bought with my own money. And I think I've shown this one before. It's AEROSMITH with 9 Lives, and this one came out in 1997 on Columbia Records. So when I actually started listening to music somehow seriously, I grew up in the 90s, and like any other 90s kid, I started listening to music through MTV. MTV in the 90s played a lot of crappy music, like a lot of boy bands were around, Britney Spears and things like that. But every once in a while they would play some really cool rock and roll music in the mid-90s and late 90s. And one of those bands was AEROSMITH, which was still around with this and came out with a new album called 9 Lives. And I remember watching the music video for Falling in Love is Hard on the Knees, and I loved everything about that music with the great guitars, great vocals, and I loved everything about this that song, which is kind of funny because a lot of really hardcore AEROSMITH fans will consider this album as one of their worst. But I was introduced to rock and roll music through that song and that album, and that's what led me to pursue or to find more rock and roll music from listening to that to this album. And I still think it's a really good album. It has a lot of really great songs in this record. 9 Lives is great, Falling in Love, Hole in My Soul, it was a big hit. There's a song called Attitude Adjustment, and Pink, really great catchy songs in this album. My introduction to rock and roll music, 9 Lives from 1997. Alright, next one. Also from listening to MTV, I started listening to more and more rock music. But what really caught my attention from watching a lot of MTV music videos was a band called NIRVANA. And specifically the song from this album, this one's in Utero, and came out in 1993 on GEFFEN records. And by this time Kurt Cobain had already died, but they were still playing a lot of his music on MTV, in particular a song called Heart-Shaped Box. I remember watching that music video for that song and just being completely obsessed about the visuals, about the attitude, the guitars, the vocals from Kurt Cobain. They were just so amazing, and this is really the album that led me to pursue or to find more alternative rock music. Bands like the Pixies and the Smashing Pumpkins, Veruca Salt, even bands like the Breeders. A lot of that 90s alternative rock music that came out in that decade. And this is the album that really led me to, or introduced me to that type of music. So yeah, that's my second one, Nirvana with In Utero. Alright, my third pick for a gateway album is what I believe is the ultimate gateway band for people that are into punk rock music. And of course I had to talk about Green Day. This one is INSOMNIAC with INSOMNIAC that came out in 1995 on REPRISE Records. And I call it a gateway band because, or the ultimate gateway band, because Green Day is the band that really put punk rock music out there in the mainstream. They were one of the very first bands that did that. Of course, there were a lot of great punk rock music, punk rock bands before Green Day, but Green Day was the only one to break the barrier into the mainstream, and putting them on MTV with the album called Dookie, of course. And when Dookie came out in 1994, of course, I was aware of the band. I knew them. I knew that I liked them. But maybe I was a little bit too young to realize to become a huge fan of Green Day. It wasn't until 1995 came out with INSOMNIAC, and I remember watching the music video for Walking Contradiction from this record. When that song came out, and I was obsessed about everything that had to do with Green Day. I loved the vocals, the guitars, the catchiness, the melodies, and this is the album really that led me to pursue or to really find more punk rock music. And this band, after listening to this one, of course, I started listening to the older Green Day albums. I became a Green Day fan. I started listening to more punk rock bands from the 90s, like NoFX, MXPX, Bad Religion, and bands like that came out during that era. And this led really to, for me, to everything. My Green Day fanhood, my fanhood towards punk rock music. And this is the album that started all, INSOMNIAC from 1995. So of course I had to talk about the ultimate gateway band, in my opinion. Alright, up next, when I started to listen to more punk rock music, I remember I had some friends in college that were also into punk rock. And they are the ones that really got me into listening to more real punk rock. In their opinions, Green Day was a little bit too commercial, maybe too mainstream, maybe too poppy, and they are the ones that recommended me to listen to more hardcore punk music. And one of those first hardcore punk bands that I started to listen to back in the day was the Misfits, and this is their 2 greatest hits or compilation albums. This one's Collection 1, and this one's Collection 2, and Collection 1 came out in 1986 on Plan 9, Collection 2 came out in 1995 on Caroline Records. And if you're trying to get into the Misfits music, these are 2 great CDs to get into because each of them have over 20 songs in the track list. And of course they have all the hits from the Misfits plus more, a lot more. So if you're trying to get into them, make sure that you pick up these 2, the Collection 1 and Collection 2. And this band was really my introduction to hardcore music, and they did it really well because even though the guitars and the music was really hard punk rock style of music, very lo-fi type of punk rock music, which in theory was not very accessible for someone that's starting to get into punk music, the vocals were still very melodic. The vocals from Glenn Danzig, he sang in a way that made it very accessible to listen to the songs from the Misfits. That was my introduction to hardcore punk, and it really got me started to listen to more bands like Fugazi and Minor Threat and Black Flag and Circle Jerks and bands like that. So yeah, the Misfits with Collection 1 and Collection 2, my introduction to hardcore punk music. And my last album that I chose for this video, of course I had to talk about this one of the greatest albums ever made, Radiohead with Kid A from 2000 on Parlophone Records. And in my opinion, there's an era of music before Kid A, an era of music after Kid A came out. In my opinion, this is the album that broke all the rules about how music should be made. Before this album came out, I always thought that music has to have a specific structure and follow some different kind of rules to make a song or an album. This album broke all those rules. It made it a complete experiment to put out a record, and it's just a combination of different sounds and feelings and emotions that they compiled into the single record, and didn't follow any kind of rules or any kind of structure in particular to make this record. And it ended up sounding fantastic. I remember it was very hard to get into when this album came out, but after many listens later, I still find that this is one of the greatest albums that have ever been made. And I got it on 10-inch record, on vinyl. This is the band also that got me started into listening to more experimental, alternative rock music, bands like Joy Division, maybe Sonic Youth, even, most of them are older bands, the Radiohead of course, but really got me starting to listen to more of those alternative or alt rock bands, even bands like the Pixies. Radiohead was really my introduction to that style of experimental music. And that's it. That's my 5th pick for the Nerdy Punks contest. I hope you liked it, Mark. Congratulations again on the 100 subscribers. Let me know if you have any questions about these records. Again, thank you for watching and take care. Bye-bye.